Let's start right at the beginning, and I mean right at the beginning, okay? So when you were a child, you sold comic books to your parents and chewing gum to your friends at school. Tell me about this and why you think entrepreneurs tend to start early in life.
Oh, great question. So both of those just seemed like good ideas. I don't know why I felt the need to take money off my parents to do something most kids would do for free. Maybe I was testing, how money worked or how much they wanted me to be creative. I don't know, but that takes me back quite far. I think the chewing gum venture was a wee bit more of a thing. I took the bus, used to take the bus to school, and I got 20p a week pocket money.
Okay.
And I used to buy these bits of chewing gum for 1p. And one day on the bus home, one of the other boys said to me, "Can I have one?" And I said, "Yes, but it'll cost you 2p." Yeah. And by the end of the week, I'd made 84p, which was, in percentage terms, pretty phenomenal.
After inflation, that's like £1 billion in today's money.
That's it. I mean, I'm not quite that old, but something like that. Yeah. When my dad shut it down, so regulation.
Your dad shut it down?
Yeah, he wasn't sure it was ethical to take money off the other kids like that.
Fair enough, I see his point. I had a similar thing where I used to sell cans of Coca-Cola at school, and one of the teachers shut it down. I almost got banned from school for it, actually.
Shocking.
Yeah, but
this should be encouraging entrepreneurs.
I know, it got to a point where I was making more money than, dare I say it, some of the primary school teachers perhaps. I was making hundreds of pounds a day in some cases. So.
Wow, from Coke?
From Coke?
Yeah, Coca-Cola.
Yeah, of course, important clarification. Coke, chocolate. I used to bring in a duffel bag, basically, of sweets. It started with half of my backpack, and it just evolved. And then everybody started doing it. The market got saturated, and then it was over, basically.
Great learnings from the age of?
I don't know, 6, 7, maybe older than that. 10 probably. Yeah. Okay, fast forward a little bit more, I guess, to proper business then. So your first business was Lingo24, a translation tech company. Over 20 years, you built this up to 200 full-time staff across the UK, the Netherlands, Romania, Panama, the Philippines, New Zealand, and the US. And then you successfully sold the company in 2021. That's an amazing journey, right? What advice would you give to entrepreneurs listening right now that are right at the early stage? They want to build something like you did, have a successful exit maybe. What tips, what recommendations would you give them?
So one of the tips I had from one of our investors in Lingo was that the journey is not linear. People tend to think successful people are consistently successful, and that is not my experience. You will experience extreme highs and extreme lows, and I think from a mindset perspective, if you can view that as being like a sport, like something that you have to deal with. I often think about the quote from the poem If that they show before you go into Centre Court or Wimbledon. Okay. Meet with triumph and disaster and meet those and treat those two imposters just the same. Okay. I think that's a really important lesson for entrepreneurs.
It's like if you meet triumph
and disaster,
but treat them
and treat those two imposters just the same.
Like
so that is success and failure are both not your natural state. Yeah. Just try and keep the heat, as we would say in Scotland, and deal with humility and move on. Yeah.
Is there anything that you wish you knew when you started that you know now, perhaps after a couple of decades of grinding it out and building something? Is there anything that you wish you can go back and tell yourself?
I think the one thing I would say is to trust your gut. We had a very experienced, impressive business leader come in as an investor and chairman in my last business. And I think I was a bit in awe of him, and I deferred to him. And I think that was a problem. And we allowed some people into the business that probably curtailed our scope of having a tremendous exit in that situation. So trust your gut is my advice.
And in hindsight, whenever I look at the decisions that I made, which turned out not to be the right decision, it's always because I didn't do that. And I knew deep down that's what I should have done, but I just ignored my gut. It's so weird that your gut, most of the time, it's right, isn't it? It's just your past experience, it builds up, it compounds, and then you have an intuition, you have a feeling about something, even if the data doesn't tell you that. But if you act upon it, most of the time, it's right.
I completely agree with that. And that is the fundamental thing that you are backing in setting up your own business, is your judgment. And any investors you have, they are backing your judgment as well. So I agree with that. And maybe one allied point is to invest in self-understanding, whether that's some form of coaching or learning about psychology. Why you are the person you are is quite an interesting journey to go.
I'm a big believer in that, man. I find that so oftentimes with basically anything in life, getting a coach is seen as a good thing. If you want to be good at a sport, you get a coach. If you want to learn how to cook, then get a Gordon Ramsay cookbook or something. But when it comes to business, when it comes to building something, when it comes to trying to be successful, people see a coach as either like a negative or someone trying to scam you, and I'm sure there are lots of people out there that perhaps do fall into that bad camp. But there's so many good people out there as well that having a coach as a CEO, it can be a massively powerful thing if it's done correctly.
Yeah. I think that's right. And again, not losing sight of the fact that we should, as entrepreneurs, trust our own gut, but also be open-minded and view life as this journey of learning.
Yeah, definitely, man. So your current business, Pawprint, you help drive climate action and sustainability. That's why you're in London today at the climate conference and everything. You've raised several million from investors and through crowdfunding to make this happen. A lot of founders that we speak to on this podcast, they are perhaps struggling to raise, to pitch, to get capital. What tips would you give them? What tips and recommendations can you give to people listening that are looking to raise from angels or VCs or crowdfunding right now?
So it's a tough time for raising, no doubt about it, and I see that both as a founder and as an investor. And I think that people do need to adapt and be willing to do things at lower cost. I think in terms of when you are pitching, what's really important is to show the personal conviction that you have, what's driving you, the personal motivation sitting behind it. So I always ask quite deep personal questions of founders as to why this matters to them, what unfair advantage they've got, why they're going to grind through the tough times, and there will be tough times. So I think it's about having your understanding of self and being able to articulate that is really important.
And what are you looking for in those answers? You mentioned an unfair advantage. You mentioned, I guess, just honesty, I imagine, is part of it. But what specifically? Like we met through a investor drinks. We both invest in companies, and we were invited to a networking group for other angels and that sort of thing, and we hit it off, and that was cool. But when you're looking to back potential horses and businesses, what are you looking for specifically?
So when you're investing at the angel level, you want a scalable business, which means that you don't want to back normal people. Normal people lead to normal outcomes and don't change the world. You want people who have a craziness about them, a drive about them, a spark about them, something that just might give them a chance of building a really big business. I think you also want to think about the risks associated with that person or those people, and I would look at the team around them as well. So you might have one forceful CEO type and then another couple of founders who are involved and complement that person. So I think you need to understand that person, that dynamic, that they will probably have to change and pivot and adjust as they go on the journey. So do they have the sort of humility, the presence of mind to make those changes when needed, but also to remember what their long-term goal is, what's driving them, and play the long game.
Yes, I love the emphasis on finding people with that extreme personality, because you're right, extreme characters create extreme outcomes. And I mean, we're looking for unicorns for a reason. Unicorns, they look weird and special and different and unique, and ultimately it's the crazy ones that change the world, as Steve Jobs said, and make a real and lasting difference. So absolutely agree.